I never intended to spy on my son's wife, but leaving my tablet connected to the living room security camera turned out to be the best mistake of my life. I am 68 years old, a widow for 5, and the sole owner of a spacious 4-bedroom home in the suburbs. My husband and I worked decades to pay it off. After he passed, my son, Mark, and his wife, Sarah, often hinted that the house was too much space for one person. I usually ignored them. I liked my space. I liked my quiet mornings, my sewing room, and the guest room that stayed perfectly tidy. I was packing for a 2-week trip to visit my sister in Florida. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had stepped out to the grocery store to grab some travel snacks, leaving my tablet on the kitchen counter. When I returned, I noticed the screen was illuminated. The indoor pet camera, which I usually only checked when I left my golden retriever, Buster, at home, was broadcasting live audio. Mark and Sarah had dropped by to pick up some mail I had accidentally received for them. I paused in the hallway, taking off my coat, when Sarah's voice echoed from the small speaker. "It's perfect. Mark," she insisted, her tone sharp and commanding. "She'll be gone for 14 days. That is more than enough time to get my mom's furniture moved into the 2 spare bedrooms downstairs." Mark mumbled something low, sounding hesitant. "I don't know. Sarah, Mom is going to flip out. You know how she is about her space." "Oh, please," Sarah scoffed, accompanied by the sound of her footsteps pacing my living room floor. "Once everything is here, she will not make a scene. She avoids conflict like the plague. By the time she gets back, my mom will already be settled in." What is she going to do? Drag a 70-year-old woman's mattress out onto the lawn? She'll just accept it. She always does. I stood frozen in the hallway, a cold anger settling in my chest. They were planning to hijack my home. A younger, more fragile version of myself might have burst into the living room in tears, demanding answers. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Crying wouldn't solve this. Arguments would only give Sarah a chance to twist my words and play the victim. Instead, I waited in the hallway until I heard the front door click shut and their car pull away. Then, I walked into the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. They thought I was a pushover. They thought my home was a community resource, a backup plan for Sarah's mother, Brenda, who had a long history of wearing out her welcome everywhere she went. The next morning, I made a phone call. Not to Mark, and certainly not to Sarah. I called a local home automation company. I explained that I was going out of town and needed a rush job on a complete security upgrade. Within 48 hours, my house was transformed. The old brass deadbolts were replaced with heavy-duty smart locks, controllable only through an encrypted app on my phone. The installer also added 3 new exterior cameras with 2-way audio and motion tracking. "You're all set, ma'am." The technician smiled, handing me the digital manual. "Nobody is getting in here without your fingerprint or your permission." I thanked him and tipped him generously. I spent the rest of the evening packing my suitcases, moving slowly and purposefully. I didn't feel anxious. I felt completely in control. I boxed up the few personal items I kept in the spare rooms and locked them in my master bedroom. I was ready for my vacation. But more importantly, I was ready for Sunday dinner, where I knew Sarah would try to lay the groundwork for her little invasion. Sunday dinner was a tradition I usually enjoyed, but tonight, I watched Mark and Sarah with new eyes. Mark picked at his roast chicken, unable to meet my gaze. Sarah, on the other hand, was practically glowing with fake sweetness. "We are just so excited for you to get some sun." "Helen," Sarah beamed, pouring me another glass of water. You deserve a long break. Don't worry about a thing here. I smiled politely. I'm looking forward to it. The house is completely locked down. I even turned off the main water valve to prevent any plumbing surprises while I'm away. Sarah's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Oh, the water is that necessary? Just a precaution, I replied smoothly, cutting a piece of carrots. After dessert, as they were gathering their coats, Sarah casually leaned against the counter. By the way, Helen, I was thinking, with you gone, it might be good if I hold on to your spare key, just in case there's an emergency, or if I need to come water your indoor plants. I didn't have any indoor plants that required watering, a fact Sarah clearly overlooked. I reached into my purse and pulled out a shiny brass key. It was the old key, the one that went to the deadbolt sitting in the bottom of my trash can. That's so thoughtful of you. Sarah? I handed it to her. Her fingers closed around it quickly, her eyes gleaming with triumph. We'll keep a close eye on the place, Mark offered weakly. I know you will. I patted his arm. The next morning, my taxi arrived at 6 a.m. As the car rolled down the driveway, I looked back at my quiet, secure house. The trap was set. All I had to do now was wait for the mice to take the cheese. Florida was beautifully warm. My sister and I spent the first 2 days lounging by her pool, drinking iced tea and catching up on family gossip. I didn't mention my impending home invasion. I wanted to handle it my own way. On the afternoon of the third day, my phone buzzed on the patio table. Motion detected front porch. I picked up the device and tapped the notification. The high-definition video feed loaded instantly. I settled back into my lounge chair and watched the show begin. A large, rented moving box truck was parked in my driveway. Sarah hopped out of the passenger side, looking determined and energized. Behind her came Brenda, Sarah's mother, carrying a small potted plant and a decorative pillow. Mark was nowhere to be seen, likely at work, avoiding the dirty work entirely. 2 young men in matching t-shirts lowered the ramp at the back of the truck. All right, let's get the master bedroom set up first, Sarah directed, pointing toward my front door. Mom, you just relax on the porch while I open up. Sarah marched up my front steps. She pulled the shiny brass key from her designer purse. She slid it into the lock. Or she tried to, through the camera. I watched her brow furrow. She flipped the key over, pushing harder. The smart lock's sleek black interface didn't even have a traditional keyhole. Just a small emergency slot hidden underneath that certainly didn't fit her brass key. She jiggled the handle. Locked tight. Is there a problem, sweetie? Brenda asked, looking annoyed as she held her potted plant. No, just the lock feels different, Sarah muttered. She pushed her weight against the heavy oak door. It didn't budge a millimeter. My sister walked over, handing me a fresh glass of tea. What are you watching? I angled the screen so she could see. Just my daughter-in-law, learning a very important lesson about boundaries. Sarah spent a full 5 minutes fighting with my front door. She tried lifting the handle, pushing with her shoulder, and even checking the key under the porch light, as if the metal had magically changed shape. Sarah. The movers are charging by the hour, Brenda complained, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I know. Mom, I don't understand. This is the key she gave me. Sarah pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. A moment later, my own phone vibrated with a text from Mark. Hey, Mom, did you change your locks? Sarah is trying to check on the house and her key isn't working. I swiped the message away. I had no intention of typing out an explanation. On the screen, Sarah stomped down the steps. Fine. We'll use the back door. She hides a spare key under the fake rock near the patio. I switched the camera view on my app to the backyard feed. Sarah marched through the side gate, Brenda trailing behind her. Sarah knelt by the patio and picked up the hollow plastic rock. She reached inside and pulled out another key. She practically ran to the back door, jamming it into the handle. Again, nothing. I had replaced that door's lock, too. Sarah let out a frustrated noise, kicking the bottom of the door with her sneaker. Why would she do this? She never changes anything in this stupid house. Well, what are we supposed to do? Brenda asked, looking at the two movers who had now wandered into the backyard, carrying a heavy mattress between them. Put it down on the grass for a second, Sarah ordered them. She glared at the back door. She probably just upgraded to a smart lock and forgot to give us the code. I'm calling Mark to see if he can override it. It was time to make my presence known. I tapped the microphone icon on my screen. Please do not leave a mattress on my lawn. The sprinklers run at 3 o'clock. My voice echoed clearly from the camera mounted above the back porch. Sarah jumped backward, dropping the fake rock. Brenda let out a startled shriek, clutching her chest. The two movers immediately set the mattress down on the concrete patio, looking around in confusion. Helen! Sarah gasped, staring up at the small black dome. Are you watching us? I am, I replied calmly, sipping my tea in Florida. I received a motion alert. Imagine my surprise to see a moving truck in my driveway. Sarah recovered quickly, her face hardening into a mask of fake innocence. Oh, Helen, we were trying to surprise you. Mom needed a place to stay for a few weeks, and we thought, since the house was empty, we could just get her settled and clean up the guest rooms for you. A surprise, I repeated dryly. How thoughtful. However, as I mentioned on Sunday, the house is locked down. Brenda will not be staying there. Sarah's fake smile vanished. Helen, be reasonable. Mom has nowhere else to go right now. Her lease ended. You have 2 empty bedrooms just collecting dust. Family helps family. Family asks permission. I corrected her. You plan to move her in secretly. I heard your entire plan on the living room camera last week. Once everything is here, she will not make a scene. Was that the phrase? Sarah turned pale. Brenda looked at her daughter, utterly embarrassed. You spied on us, Sarah demanded, her voice raising in pitch. In my own home? Yes. Now, I suggest you tell those gentlemen to pack the truck back up. You do not have access to my property. I released the microphone button, cutting off whatever excuse she was about to scream into the camera. Through the silent video feed, I watched Sarah pace furiously across my patio. She was yelling, gesturing wildly at the camera, then at her mother. Brenda looked miserable, sitting on the edge of the mattress. My phone rang. It was Mark. I answered on the first ring. Hello, Mark. Mom, what is going on? He sounded stressed, out of breath. Sarah just called me screaming. She says you locked them out and you're refusing to let Brenda move in. That is exactly what is happening, I answered, keeping my tone perfectly even. Mom, come on. Sarah is my wife. You can't just treat her like a trespasser. We figured you wouldn't mind if you figured you could walk all over me. I interrupted. Mark, I love you. But this is my house, not yours, not Sarah's. You do not get to dictate who lives here. She's already paid the movers. Mom, just unlock the door from your phone. Please. I don't want to deal with this. That sounds like a problem you need to solve with your wife, I said. If that truck is not out of my driveway in 10 minutes, I am turning on the irrigation system. You wouldn't. I ended the call. On the screen, Sarah was marching toward a ground-level window, inspecting the latch. She actually looked like she was considering prying off the screen. I opened the smart home app, navigated to the lawn care section, and tapped the manual override for Zone 1 and Zone 2. In the backyard, 6 high-pressure sprinkler heads popped up from the grass. A second later, a massive fan of water sprayed across the lawn, sweeping directly over the patio edge. Sarah shrieked as the cold water hit her legs. Brenda scrambled off the mattress, but she wasn't fast enough. The corner of the mattress absorbed a healthy dose of the afternoon watering cycle. The movers didn't need to be told twice. As soon as the sprinklers hit the mattress, they grabbed the dry end and practically dragged it back toward the driveway, leaving Sarah and Brenda dodging the rotating water streams. My phone rang again. Mark. Mom, did you just turn the sprinklers on them? I warned you, Mark, I said. I take my home security very seriously. This is insane, he yelled. Sarah is furious. She says she's never speaking to you again. I accept those terms, I replied calmly. While I have you on the line, Mark, I need to update you on a few other administrative changes. Silence on his end. What do you mean? Since you and Sarah clearly feel entitled to my assets, I spent yesterday morning reviewing my finances. Starting next month, I will no longer be paying your auto insurance policy. I am also removing myself as the guarantor on your credit card. You are a 35-year-old man. It's time you handle your own household. Mom, you can't do that. Sarah just cut her hours at work. Then she has plenty of free time to help her mother find a new apartment. I noted, I am setting boundaries. Mark, my home, my money, and my peace of mind belong to me. If you want to be a part of my life, you will respect them. If you cannot do that, then you can manage on your own. Mom, wait. I will see you when I get back from Florida. Enjoy the rest of your week. I hung up, turned off my phone's ringer, and took a long, refreshing sip of my iced tea. My sister looked over from her magazine, raising an eyebrow. Everything all right back home? She asked. Everything. I smiled. Is absolutely perfect. I turned my attention back to the tablet screen, purely for the satisfaction of the finale. The moving truck was already packed. The 2 workers were standing by the cab, smoking cigarettes and shaking their heads. Sarah was drenched from the knees down, her expensive shoes ruined by the muddy grass. She was yelling into her phone, undoubtedly at Mark. Brenda was already sitting in the passenger seat of Sarah's car, looking utterly defeated. There was no easy ride today. No free guest room. No quiet widow to bully into submission. Sarah finally hung up her phone. She turned and glared directly at the porch camera, even without the audio turned on. I could read her lips perfectly. It wasn't a kind word. I simply smiled at the screen. I didn't need to say a word back. The locked door spoke for itself. Sarah stomped to her car, got in, and slammed the door. A moment later, the moving truck roared to life, reversing out of my driveway. Sarah's car followed close behind. Within minutes, my property was completely empty. The driveway was clear. The lawn was freshly watered. The house stood silent, solid, and entirely mine. I closed the security app and tucked the tablet into my beach bag. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the lingering anxiety of trying to keep the peace. I didn't feel the weight of my son's expectations or my daughter-in-law's silent demands. I had drawn a line in the sand. and I had enforced it without shedding a single tear. "Ready for lunch?" my sister asked, standing up and stretching. "I am," I replied, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. "I'm buying." I returned home a week and a half later. The house was exactly as I had left it, pristine, quiet, and smelling faintly of lemon polish. Mark came over 3 days later. He came alone. He stood in my kitchen, looking uncharacteristically nervous. I made him a cup of coffee and sat at the island, waiting for him to speak. "I'm sorry, Mom," he finally said, staring at his mug. "I shouldn't have let Sarah try to push Brenda onto you. I knew it was wrong, but it was just easier to let her do it than to fight with her." "Easier for you," I corrected him gently. "Not easier for me." "I know. And I'm sorry." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Sarah is still pretty mad. She says she won't come over for Sunday dinners anymore." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "That is her choice, Mark. But let me be very clear. Sarah is not banned from this house, but she is no longer allowed to hold a key, and she will never dictate what happens under this roof. If she cannot respect me in my own home, then her absence is a relief, not a punishment." Mark nodded slowly. He looked older, tired, but perhaps a little wiser. "I get it, Mom. I really do." "Good," I smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. "Now, how is work going?" Life changed after that trip. Sunday dinners became quieter, mostly just Mark and me, and occasionally Sarah, who was remarkably polite and tight-lipped when she did visit. She never asked for a spare key again. I kept the smart locks, I kept the cameras, but most importantly, I kept my peace. My home was my sanctuary, not a stepping stone for anyone else's convenience. I had finally learned that the strongest locks aren't made of brass. They are made of boundaries. The most valuable takeaway isn't about seeking revenge or proving a point. It is the quiet realization that protecting your own peace is never a selfish act. For a long time, it is easy to confuse keeping the peace with simply absorbing everyone else's demands. But true harmony doesn't come from endless sacrifice. It comes from setting firm boundaries and having the quiet strength to uphold them. Your home, your finances, and your mental energy are yours to control. Teaching people how to treat you often requires actions, not arguments. And sometimes, the most profound act of self-respect is simply locking the door.